Here we go. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this wonderful Tuesday afternoon or Tuesday morning. My name is Lisa Thibodeau. I'm from the Orange County Chapter 91 out here in California, San Diego County. It is my pleasure to introduce you all to Ms. Christian Paul. She has been a NAWIC member for 5 years. She's out of Atlanta, Georgia. And Christian is a senior project executive at Gilbane Building Company, which is an award-winning professional. She has over 20 years of experience in the engineering and construction industry. Christian is certified PMP, which is a project management professional, and she's also a part-time professor in the School of Building Construction at Georgia Institute of Technology. She lectures the BC 4600 Project Management 2 course. Christian's focus throughout her career has been on operational excellence. Her goal is to continue mentoring youth and contributing to the growth of the small and minority construction firms by providing strategic consulting and education to the next generation of successful construction firms. Thank you, Christian. That's an awesome goal. And as a member and mentor with NAWIC, she is committed to leading builders and building leaders. Christian's been awarded the Georgia Tech BC Student Leadership and Advisor Board's Best Teacher of the Year in 2022, the Gilbane Company Excellence of the Year in 2022, and the Outstanding Performance of the Year in 2021. She's also been awarded Autodesk's 40 Under 40 in 2021. And she's currently working on multiple projects from school construction to healthcare. So we would love to welcome Ms. Christian Paul to educate us today.
Thank you so much. That was a great introduction. I'm truly honored to be here this afternoon to talk about sustaining and supporting a diverse and inclusive workforce. And I'll be honest, when I signed up for this, I thought that I would be one of many panelists. And I later learned that I am the solo speaker for today. So with that being said, my name is Christian Paul. I'm project executive, and welcome to my TED Talk about diversity and inclusion in our field. I will say though, this honestly is a passion of mine, having been in the industry for over 20 years, starting off as an intern in the late 90s through today. I've seen this industry grow. When I started in the field, I really did not work with a ton of women. I didn't see women on the management side in construction. And so I like to spend some time just talking about my journey and the influence certain individuals had on my career and how that it translates to the folks that are here on the call and in our industry today. So I've worked as an intern. I've been a project engineer, project manager, and now I'm a project executive, and always been based from an operations standpoint. So on the job site, boots on the ground, in the dirt, if you will. And it's been quite an experience. And I will say, you know, later in my career, I'm starting to see younger women come into the industry, you know, become professionals, project managers, running job sites, sitting at the table. And that's exciting. But you know, when I thought back on what I would say for this presentation, there were key individuals that came to mind. When I thought through just the different milestones throughout my career, and you know, I took a sticky note, a card right here, and I wrote down these particular names. And I want to spend some time talking about how they were influential in my career and how that then translated to what I'm doing today. It translates to the folks that are here on the call and what we can do today moving forward. So I wrote down, and I'll be brief, Mr. Sims, Mr. Gatewood, Mr. Harris, Scott, Walter, Grant, Terry, Chris, 1, and Chris 2, and Michael. So over 20 years, these particular gentlemen have been influential in my career. And yeah, I know this is NAWIC, but the fact is, these were all men that influenced this girl right, career very early on. So as I go through my story, I want you guys to just remember the acronym MADE, M-A-D-E. And for anybody taking notes and want to ask questions, just kind of write down M-A-D-E. And I'm going to talk you through those acronyms and these particular gentlemen and how this all comes together. So at the very beginning, I mean, frankly, I came from humble beginnings. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, University City to be exact. My parents both worked, hourly wages. My dad worked in a manufacturing plant full time. If we needed additional dollars, he worked overtime. But I will say my parents were very focused on education. And I want to bring this up because this is what kind of introduced me or got me into the industry to begin with. So I know while we're talking about sustaining and keeping folks and supporting a diverse workforce, we can't ignore the efforts that we have to take to get women and to get minorities into our workforce, right? So with my humble beginnings, I went to a public school, and the first two gentlemen I like to talk about, again, Mr. Sims and Mr. Gatewood, these were high school teachers. I mean, this was my business teacher, and I took up drafting and design. And they both pulled me aside and said, you know what, Christian, you're really good at math and science. What have you thought about? Where are you going for college? And at that point, this was my senior year. I really didn't have a plan. They encouraged me to apply, and I was ultimately accepted to University of Missouri at Rolla. It's now called Missouri Science and Technology. And I was accepted to a civil engineering program. Okay, so you have this girl, she's from U-City. Parents work day to day to support us. And, I was smart. We didn't miss a day of school. I was an honor roll student, and I got into this program. But what does that really mean? I didn't know what civil engineering was. But one of the key things after Mr. Sims and Mr. Gatewood introduced me to Rolla was that I was accepted, and I was accepted into a minority engineering program. And in that program, it was a sense of community. And that's where I met Mr. Harris. He ran this program. He had been at the university for a couple decades at that point. He was instrumental in assisting younger African-American students in being successful and graduating from this engineering program. So these were my first introductions to mentorship and guidance. And mentorship is the M in my MADE. So while in college, I did a number of internships. I'm supposed to do engineering. I'm supposed to design bridges and roads and things like that. But I decided to take an internship for the city of Atlanta for their construction department. And that's when I got my first sense of what it's like to be on the job site. And I remember to this day, I worked for a younger project manager. His name was Scott. And Scott challenged me to be uncomfortable. He challenged me to go out to the job sites. He gave me really small tasks, but in those tasks, I was forced to go out and communicate with the men on the job site. I was forced to go out and ask questions to learn the fundamentals. And that was a turning point for me in deciding, hey, I'm decided that I want to do construction. I don't want to go the engineering path. So that's my chapter one, if you will, as I bring up my humble beginnings. And if you guys could kind of bear with me, I only have 4 chapters, but it gets interesting. It's good stuff. So as we talk about sustaining women, minorities in our industry, we can't leave out the fact that we have to get them engaged early on. For me, it was the minority engineering program. There are other programs specifically for this. At Georgia Tech, we have a pre-college initiative program where we have summer camps. We bring in high school students. folks here across the country, you guys may be aware of ACE. The ACE program introduces high school students and get them involved in construction, architecture, engineering. So those are just some examples of what we can do to bring younger folks into our industry. But more importantly, once they're here, we have to figure out how to support and sustain those individuals. So as I move into chapter 2, I call this In the Workforce. So here I am now, I'm a working professional, project engineer, and there are really 3 projects or instances that I like to quickly explain to you guys. The first gentleman I like to bring up is Walter. Walter was a seasoned director. He had built healthcare projects at that time for over 20 years. He'd worked at St. John's Mercy Medical Center in the Metro St. Louis area. He was a respected manager. At that time, he was probably in his early 50s. But with all of the information and expertise that Walter had, he was probably the first person to take me under his wing and teach me the engineering fundamentals. And not only did he do that, he was nice. He was just a genuine good person. It's somebody that I will never forget in my career. From that project, I then moved to Virginia, worked on another healthcare project. And again, I had a mentor. His name was Grant. Again, this is one I wouldn't forget either. So Grant was a little different than Walter. Walter was nice. He was almost like a father figure. Walter or Grant in Virginia, him and I had the same birthday. We were both born in July. But Grant had he had been in the military. He was a veteran. He had been in the industry over 30 years. He was from New York. So I'm trying to set the stage of this particular gentleman. And he was a drill sergeant. He was a drill sergeant. I worked 12, 14 hours a day. He literally was standing over my shoulder, teaching me the lessons nonetheless. But I didn't get the coddle that I got from Walter. But I will say that looking back, and of course, hindsight is always 2020, Grant made it his purpose to teach the younger project engineers. It was myself and a couple other guys. And when you're on a traveling team in construction, the people you live remote with and on that project, that becomes your family. So Grant, we would go and have dinner, we would have beverages, we would work on contracts, but then he'd expect us to be back at the job site at 5 a.m. We didn't necessarily see the value, or I didn't see the value in that when I worked that many hours, but hindsight, again, Grant was a significant person in the growth of my career. He instilled hard work and operational excellence into me. And then the last superintendent I like to describe with you guys is Terry. I worked with him in a metropolitan area here in Atlanta, Georgia. Terry, super nice guy. Again, really experienced. And, it was a big thing for me as a younger project manager to work with gentlemen that had the experience of my age. I'm 25, 27 years old. They have been working for 27, 30 years. But Terry, he was very encouraging. He was always supportive. He didn't really dictate things. He had the opportunity and the right to tell me and everybody on the job site what to do. He was a general super. But he encouraged me to step up and to become that leader. So, as I talk about chapter 2 in the workforce, the key points I want to bring from that, there were really some common things that Walter, Grant, and Terry all had in common. Besides the fact that they were like 50 plus years old and white guys in the industry, right? They took a deliberate effort in forming my career and my expertise at the right time. They recognized that I was in a position and education to become great. And I felt like they were very deliberate in informing my career. So next, I'd like to move to chapter 3. And chapter 3, at this point, I have 10 or 12 years of experience. I've been on multiple job sites. I'm comfortable on the site. I'm comfortable as a manager. But now it's time for me to move to the next step. And in chapter 3, I'd like to briefly discuss what Chris and Michael has brought to my career. And I'm going to wrap it up really quickly and bring you back to MADE, right? So Chris was the first senior project executive that I worked under that was an ally. He not only was my boss, but he was an ally. He was an advocate for me. And that's the A in my MADE. He fought for my career. He fought for me to get to a certain level. He saw things in me that I didn't necessarily see in myself. And him and I have become great friends, and we no longer work together. However, he frankly was a turning point of going from being a manager in my career to taking on leadership and becoming an executive. Much like the first Chris, I have a second Chris that is in my life. And he's an engineering classmate, just a good friend. And like the first Chris, Chris number 2, again, he's supportive. He's my cheerleader. He's my ally, my advocate. He's the one that's encouraging me to go, go, go. You could do it. Sees more in me than I see in myself. So those Chris's, they really helped in my confidence. They also really helped me stay in my career. So we talk about sustaining and supporting a diverse and inclusive workforce. Chris 1 and 2 did that for me. There were plenty of times where I had ups, downs within my career, but with their support, good wishes, even strategizing on certain things that allowed me to move forward and with confidence. And the last person I like to mention is Michael. Michael is a fellow executive. He, again, appreciated and communicated that he appreciated what I brought to the table. He saw the leadership in me. He allowed and respected the thoughts that I had. We consult with one another. He supports and trusts my decisions. So again, another ally that I have within my career. So Chris, and Michael, of course, they all saw greater detail and potential in myself than I necessarily saw. And that really helped with encouragement and growth, and also empowered me within my career. So today, here I am sitting in front of you guys, have an audience across the nation. I feel like right now I'm in my chapter 4, and this frankly is what makes me the most happy. And chapter 4 for me is the return. How can I influence our industry? How can I get students, young men, women, minorities into the industry, support them, encourage them, develop them, and help them stay and be successful? And there are a number of ways that we're doing that, a number of ways that I see this occurring in my career today. Number 1 is UJIMA and Empower, which are employee resource groups that we have at Gilbane Building Company. It's a sense of community. You know, when you're in an industry and you're the minority, the small number, it just helps to feel comfortable. You help to get clarification, confidence, promotion when you're in your community. NAWIC is another example. Look at the community that just this call brought together, right? We recognize that there's positivity in women getting together to promote and support one another. At Georgia Tech, having the opportunity to partner with Georgia Tech, not only as a client, but also as a lecturer, it really brings me great joy. I've had the opportunity to educate young people in our industry and give them textbook along with my career experience. But more importantly, it allows me to become a mentor, an ally. I help develop, which is the D in my MAID, folks in our industry. And it's exciting. It's exciting to see where these students are today. Knowing that I sat in their seat 20, 23 years ago and what they're bringing to the table. And the other part of chapter 4 for me is training. We all have to continue to develop in our careers, no matter the position that we're in. Operations, we know that there are constantly things that are changing and developing and becoming more sustainable, you name it. So training and staying informed is key for me right now in chapter 4 of my career of returning back. And chapter 4, I will say, provides me with the most joy. So going back to MAID, we have mentor-mentee programs. We have A, which is advocacy and allyship. We have our D, which is development, but it's not just development, it's development, promotion, and empowerment. We need to identify those key stars, develop them, help them to get promoted, but also empower them to take leadership positions, to make decisions, to be the lead managers in the certain roles that they want to go after. And then my E in MAID is the employee resource groups. We all need a sense of community. We all need belonging, whether it's a NAWIC at a university, our employee resource groups like UGMA or Empower. So with that being said, I did want to say a couple more things. Gilbane Building Company, we, of course, we're committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have a goal of committing $4 billion to women and diverse businesses over a 5-year period. And we're about halfway through and currently meeting our goal. And I just want to say that I'm proud to work for a company, not only that's family owned, provides MAID, right? The mentorship, the allyship, the development opportunities, training, employee resource groups. Gilbane, we now have a woman COO, which is unheard of for a company, a multi-billion-dollar construction company. And Gilbane has made that financial commitment. And, once we hit that 5-year mark, I have full confidence that we're then going to set a new goal, a bigger goal, to help support businesses. But I want to round out by saying, hey, so I just talked about Mr. Sims, Gatewood, Harris, Scott from my internship, project managers and executives and friends that I've worked with. But I would like to ask the group, I would like to challenge the group, when are we going to become the next names that are on the sticky note for our next TED Talk speaker in 10 years, right? So, we need our next round of successful construction folks to name drop a Christian or a Lisa or Jerry, Savannah, Sharon, Yvette, Heidi, right? Tanya, Etche, Margot, and, not forgetting our guys that support us, but we're at a time now where we could also have women on a sticky note as well and influence our careers. So that really rounds out my first TED Talk with you guys. I appreciate your time and your attention. I'd like to open up the floor for questions, comments, discussions. We have some time to spare. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Christian. As we wait for people to ask you questions and give you applause in the chat, we can also ask, if you are comfortable, you can also put your questions in the chat for Christian, and we will make sure she is able to address them as well.
Carolyn, can you unmute yourself and ask your question to Christian?
Hi, Christian. Andrea from the Fort Worth chapter. A very compelling story, really, especially because I connect with the fact of coming from humble beginnings. How did you manage to make these relationships flourish as you progressed in your career?
Yeah, I think the relationships flourish because I'm humble and very appreciative and open in my communications. As I move from project to project, I generally keep in touch with key individuals that are within my career. I still lean on them for advice and mentorship. So I think keeping that open communication, showing the appreciation when they are helpful for you, are the key ways to do so.
Thank you.
Hi, Christian. I was just wondering, I really liked your acronym, the MADE, and everything it stood for. Is that something that you developed on your own, or is it a Galbane thing, or like is there more?
Yeah. I made it up, no pun intended.
It's really good. It's amazing.
Now, as I was thinking through just my story and the certain individuals, I was thinking like, how do I bring it back to a certain theme? And I actually started with MADE. I started with throwing out what helped me in my career, the mentorship, the allyship. I thought through that, and then I went back to my story. But yeah, I needed something catchy to keep you guys' attention for 20 minutes. And yeah, those are truly things that I think will help to sustain a diverse workforce though.
Kind of just to elaborate a little bit on that, the employee resource groups, that's more, can you elaborate on that a little more? Is it associations outside your company? Is it something to do with like, is there something you can develop inside your company to do with that, or?
Yeah, and thank you for that question, because I did have some notes to kind of further elaborate on that, and I kind of skimmed by it. But at my current company, we have employee resource groups that are among employees within our region and then nationally. So we have Empower, which is for women. We get together on a monthly basis. We rotate what we do each month. 1 month, we may watch a TED Talk and have a discussion. We have volunteering that we're doing next month. The following month, we may do something social. But yes, this particular group is sponsored, if you will, by our company. But that you don't necessarily need a company to do that. You just need to form your own committee with like-minded people within the industry. And you could create your own employee resource group, honestly. The other one that I mentioned is Ujima. So very similar, it's for African Americans. As an Atlanta office, we get together once a month. We have a quick check-in call. We may do learning sessions. We may have a guest speaker come in. But again, it's just to create a sense of community. And within our groups, we have allies. It's not just all women in our group, it's just to help women. It's not all African Americans in our group. We have allies to our ERGs. But those are generally, they're clubs within our company, really smaller than a NAWIC presence, but that's what our ERGs are. That's what I'm describing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Christian, this is Adrienne. Thank you again for doing this. This is really informative. my question is, maybe not so much a question, is how do you overcome some obstacles like DE&I has created amongst amongst the cultures? Because we're also seeing that there is some animosity against DE&I. So I'm just wondering if you had come across anything like that, and how have you overcome that?
I'll give you an example, and I know exactly what you're referring to, especially with a lot of the laws being passed today, and changes that they're making in recruitment and sponsoring of DEI, et cetera. But how to overcome it. So there was a time I was on the job site, and this was during the time where, it was the George Floyd protest and things like that. And there was a lot of animosity from a DEI standpoint. And the company charged us with, having a all hands talk. And I personally did not agree with having that open discussion among our construction workers, of which we, frankly, women and minorities are just that. We're a small number. And so in that particular case, I avoided anything that could come up as conflict. But I would say throughout my career, as things have come up, I've always addressed it. I've never really backed down or allowed to be bullied or mistreated or not respected. And I've also created allies and friendship and support among my overall teams. So when those things did happen, I had the support of team members, superintendents, managers, executives, to get behind me and fight that battle. But I'm not gonna lie, there's been times in which I've come new to a job site and I was told that, oh, the cleaning ladies are up on level 4. Like, and I said, okay, just so you know, I'm the project manager that's taking over. And what's your name? What company are you at? And I guess your punch list will now be 500 items instead of 50, right? So you just find the allies to support you. Always demand respect, and don't back down. Honestly, that may not be the best advice, but that's what I've done in my 20 years experience.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Rochelle, did you want to address the question that you put in the Q&A?
Yes, is my audio on?
Yes, it is.
Okay, yeah. About 15 years ago in Queens, New York has 5 boroughs and Queens is one of them. Gilbane hosted in a parking lot a family event that was focused on construction site safety. And they set up booths and all sorts of games for youngsters to attend with their parents that worked for Gilbane, and also invited NAWIC to the event. And we set up a Block Kids booth. There was a barbecue going on. And what was great is you have not only the family style barbecue and community outreach, but the kids got a feeling of what construction was like in a very subdued way. It's almost like, how do you get your kids to eat vegetables? You turn it into a broccoli cookie, that kind of thing, where they don't know what they're absorbing, but it's all good and knowledge. And I was wondering if you could put in a good word for bringing that back. That's what I'm applauding Gilbane, and we want you guys back.
That is actually, I just wrote that down. I'll definitely give that office that word. But I was telling a couple folks on the panel that I'm starting up a couple high school projects here in the Metro Atlanta area. And that would be a really cool event to have here, to get high schoolers, interested, or, at least introduced in a fun way, to construction. So I will definitely send that word to our New York office, but I'm writing that down for my team here in Atlanta as well. Thank you for that note.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Christian, Jolsnut did ask a follow-up question regarding the ERGs in the chat. She said, do you have separate ERGs for field and office, or do you have them together based on gender or race or other status?
No, it's a single ERG. So if it's Empower, we have women on the job site, women in the office, we all come together, and it's a great opportunity to merge the two. Same for all of the groups. We come together, those in the field as well as in the office. And a lot of times our folks in the field, they feel isolated. I spent my entire career until recently on the job site. So the ERGs, when you merge them, is a great way to introduce and, keep that collaboration between field and office so that there's no separation.
Hey, Christian, it's Carrie again. Still kind of speaking about the ERGs and how that question just came up. How do you form an ERG in your company? And yes, everyone is, able to join and everything, but how do you do it and not have people feel excluded? Like, how do you do a women's group in construction? And yes, the men are more than welcome to join, but how do you make them feel comfortable to join and let them know that we're forming a group to include people, but not exclude people as well?
It comes from the top down. It's really the leadership that says, hey, we see a need to do exactly what this talk is about. We see a need to support diversity and inclusion in our company. And our executive leadership group says, hey, we recognize the value that keeping women, minorities, just a variety of people on our teams, the value that brings. And in order to do that, we need to have support groups for these individuals. And when it comes from the top down, even if there's someone that may be pushing back, or there may be a manager that says, oh no, I don't want my team members going to this event. If it's company dictated and the leadership supports it, they have to fall in line. You can't exclude or keep your team members back because you don't necessarily agree with the idea. So the best way is to implement those type of things from executive team down as a mandate. And I'm fortunate, and not just Gilbane, I'll be honest, there are other companies that I'm aware of that have these same support groups. But when they're implemented from executive leadership and that value is shown, that's how it works. That's how it works, and that's how people aren't held back and they're allowed to participate. And probably 75% of our activities are during the workday. We elect to do things after hours, go play putt-putt golf, or, we went pickleball and things like that, but it's supported by the company. So you have to make your pitch to the executive leaders. You go to them with data. When you have diverse workforces, then you're this much more effective. You are advanced in new ideas by this much. Go with data and say, for that, I want to develop a group to create a community, because data also shows that when we don't have these supportive groups, we don't have allies, women leave the industry. And it is what it is. This industry is not conducive to women. So we have to have these things in place in order for women to grow, learn, advance, and do well. And when they're given those things, the women do well in construction. So.
Thank you.
Christian, there's a follow-up question from Melissa Bradley. She'd like to know more about what your ERG does and what value it brings to the women at your company.
So The value is training. The value is having a sense of community, forming those relationships so that when we're not in the group, we have allies that we could pick up the phone and call for advice. And when you create that sense of community, you know, people are comfortable and they stay and they grow. And when they grow, they feed back into the company, right? So we want to create a community that fosters development and people feel like they belong. As far as the budget, I think the company for our office may allocate $10,000 a year per ERG. Which frankly, in the grand scheme of things, is not a lot of money considering revenue that everyone on this call deals in. And we put a budget, we set a budget at the very beginning. It gets approved just like all the other budgets in the office does. Whether that budget is for awards or incentives, it falls within that category and it's included in our financial forecast. And, you know, the budget is there and then we do our plans. Sometimes we spend all of it. Sometimes there's money that's rolled over. We collaborate. It's not just the women's ERG. In our office, we have a NAWIC, or I'm sorry, we have Empower for the women. We have African Americans. We have our young professionals group. So these individuals, they're, you know, and they say not to put an age on it, but I quickly found out I was now outside of the young professionals group. But you know, these individuals have been in the industry, I would say maybe 7 years or less, and they have things and they have a commonality, right? Because they're new in the industry, they have different interests, you know. So we have OLA for our Hispanic group. I mean, I could go on and on. But again, it goes back to that community, belonging. When people strive, they're invested in being productive for the company. So it's a return for sure.
Thank you for that answer and all the different aspects of it. We got another 2 follow-up questions. One regarding the ERGs. So you talked about the budget that Gilbane allocates. So is it 10,000 per ERG? Is that kind of how it breaks down, or do they allow more for one as opposed to the other?
I would like to think that it's equally spread across all, right? But I'm honestly, I'm not involved in all of them, so I don't know for sure.
And then Simone would like to know, how is Gilbane able to track and implement the $4 million spent with the diverse trades?
Yeah, so there's an entire plan and program that we implement. So anytime we are buying out or contracting on a project, we use a software called B2G, and it's something new that we've implemented. So whether it's a direct trade partner or even a sub-tier, everyone must enter their information into B2G. And those numbers are calculated. So we can then compare, okay, on this project, you know, I got 20% of our goal or 30%, but it literally, it's all tracked by data. But at the very beginning, I'll give you an example. I'm buying out, working through GMP on a new middle school, high school. I know that this project is over $200 million. Our goal generally is 20%. That's $40 million. So there are certain things that I've put in place and our team and our Atlanta office has put in place to ensure that we're communicating to our trade partners that, hey, this project is coming. We want to gain interest. We want to get information. We want to help get you pre-qualified. So when it's time to bid, we have those folks at the table. We've invited those folks. We've worked with them to come to the table to bid the work, to then be awarded the work. We do a lot of community outreach programs to communicate about our projects, especially the larger projects, because it is difficult. You have to have a concerted effort in order to get a $40 million WMBE, you know, financial goal on a larger project. But then we track it through B2G, and that's done on a monthly basis, even from a pay application standpoint. But yeah, that's a big picture how we track the spending. And so just think about it my little $200 million project is producing, 40 million. And I'm just one project of 10 in Atlanta. But then we have Chicago and New York and all the offices, and that all accumulates to $4 billion over 5 years.
Christian, how do you do your follow-up? Yeah, so you engage interest, you put out the invites, you get everyone pre-qualified, but when you're talking about companies from a diverse status, like those projects are very large for them. Like if they might be a small business and can't do that scope of work or can't get bonded for that, or financial safety, all that stuff comes into it. Where is the follow-up from engaging them, getting them pre-qualified, setting out the bid to actually awarding them the work? Like that's where I
Yeah.
feel there's a lot of disconnect. Like how
Yeah.
do you get them that work?
You're absolutely right. And so I've challenged my team in talking about that particular project, and we have to think outside the box, because to your point, these companies, they don't have bonding capacity of $20 million to do a $20 million electrical package. So we've strategically sat down as a team, and it's not just operations lead like myself and our project managers, but with our pre-construction executives. And we're saying, okay, how can we logically break this project up into packages that are bite-sized, if you will, that a smaller DBE can still bid this scope of work, get a chunk of this work, and be successful at this work.
Right.
And so for me as a leader, I have to challenge my team. And I've seen that. Hey, guess what? We can't do what we've always done to get these kind of numbers, right? I have to bring them to the table and say, what can we do? On this particular project, I've probably had no less than 10 separate meetings with different trade partners saying, hey, what's your interest? What do you think you can be successful at? What's your bonding capacity? Is there an opportunity for you guys to joint venture with a larger firm in order to come to the table? It's a lot of work. Yeah. Yeah, but someone has to step up and be that person that says, hey, you know what? I'm not just going to sit back and say, oh, we're going to do it like we always do, and then end up with a 2%, MWBE participation.
Right.
It has to be definitely a deliberate, concerted effort. And it's a lot of effort. Don't get me wrong. But you need individuals that are committed to that, truly.
Thank you.
Mhm. Good conversation. Thank you, guys. What else is in the chat?
I do have one more question. You talked about these efforts coming from the executive level and onto the organization. What would be your recommendation to get those efforts noticed, maybe if it's coming the other way around?
Create allies, find people of common interests, and form your groups that way. So I'm not sure if you're a position, but folks that are in your office, people that are on your job sites, create your community, create that allyship and that support at your level. And maybe even reach up and grab that manager or, executive that would support and sponsor those efforts. The easiest way, of course, everything that's a change and a challenge, top down. But that doesn't say you can't do it at your level with the folks you work with, interact with, that have those common interests for sure. And, you just have to be ambitious. You have to be vocal about it. Tell folks, here are the benefits. This is why I think we need to do it. And then do it. And people will see that passion. People will start to see the benefits in it, and it will catch on. It will catch on for sure.
Perfect. Thank you.
Christian, to Andrea's point, you talked about when you address the executives to bring your data with you. So what are some good sources for data? What are some like key pieces of information that executives will pay attention to?
Right offhand, Lisa, I'll be honest, I can't rattle off sources. But if you give me one day, I could go back and tell you what those sources are, and I could, send out a communication. But I always think that in our industry, especially a male-dominated industry, it's tends to be more respected when you bring data to the table. You can't dispute data. I always teach my younger project engineers and interns, no one cares how you feel. What is the data, right? So that's why I say that. There are numerous resources, articles, et cetera, that show that diverse workplaces are more efficient, and there's numerous articles that show how many women are leaving the industry or not interested in construction. We know that. But I just mentioned data because you can't dispute facts and numbers. And that's also, I think, part because I'm a the engineering nerd in me, I'm always like data, data, data. But men, they don't care, and hey, men on the call, but men want to see data. They don't necessarily want to see a woman coming in the office like, oh, well, I feel like we should have a sense of community. I want to have more women around. They're not going to listen to that, in my experience, right? So that's why I say, come with the data, come with the facts. It's more compelling for the people that we're pleading to in most cases.
Jerry?
Thank you, Lisa. First, I want to say, Christian, thank you so much for being who you are and sharing your chapters with us today and your acronym for MAID, excuse me. And I also want to say that you did a great job enumerating our ERGs. You only left out a couple that I can help you with. We also have APEC, Military Advantage, and Pride, and you hit on all of the others.
Yeah.
And at Gilbane, we also hold up our ERGs because they are, in fact, by the leadership, a pathway for all of the employees to help with problem solving across the organization. They also help with innovation and development of ideas and problem solving. And it's a way that we can showcase ourselves as leaders early on within the organization, because we do have executive sponsors that are part of each one of these respective ERGs. So it is a very, very important aspect of Gilbane's culture and how they help people to feel and know that they have belonging here in the company. The other point I wanted to punctuate for you is the question in regards to the $4 billion and the tracking and the tools. So you did mention the B2G system that we have implemented to help us track all of our, what we call DOSB, diverse owned small business spend. And we also have what you referenced in your talk in regards to your GMP. Early on in the projects, all of our leaders established a roadmap where they identify as many diverse owned businesses as they can early in that project against the GMP. And we have an economic inclusion plan that helps all of our trade partners to identify who they will utilize in helping us to engage diverse owned businesses. So I just wanted to add those two things to your excellent presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Here's one other additional comment in the chat that I wanted to make sure was paid its proper attention. Donna mentioned that your talk was so inspiring and exciting to hear about the progress that you've made. Having an advocate and a company that supports and promotes is actively engaged in DEI. Having that support is huge, but I agree, we do not need to wait for our company to promote this. And thank you, Sharon Hidalgo, for adding those resources for research and data collection from McKinsey to the Department of Labor. the Federal Report for Economic Group, the House Crow publication, and Siegel. So Ms. Paul, do you have any closing remarks for us? Anything that, any points of encouragement or otherwise?
I will say for the folks on the call and as you communicate to your colleagues and back to your offices, just remember that as an individual, whether you work for your entrepreneur, work for a small company, large company, you could do your part in supporting diversity within construction. As individuals, you could be allies. If you're in a management position, you know, you could provide mentorship, you could be that cheerleader. But you know, we all have a role in this, and I just challenge you guys to be, you know, exactly who these particular gentlemen are in my career. Be that for a younger person or a colleague within their career, and you never know, if we all take some small steps, it'll all add up to sustaining a great construction industry, because I mean, this is a great industry. We're doing really good things. I'm still excited about it. I'm excited for the next 20 years of what it'll look like, what my career will look like. And I hope you guys just picked up a nugget from my talk today. Look forward to my book being published. No, I'm joking. Well, no, I'm not joking, but I don't know when it's going to get published. But no, I appreciate you guys' time. Thank you so much.
Christian, thank you for answering the call to be the one and only one that stood up for this panel, for this TED Talk. I certainly want to come to the next one. Thank you so much, Ms. Paul.
All right. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate the questions as well.
Thank you.